So we already understand why the potassium iodide's there, and salt obviously should be there. But what is this sodium silic aluminate? What is sodium thiosulfate? And why in the world do they have dextrose in our salt? Hello again, my name is Dante Ferrigno, and I have been a carnivore now for a little over 3 years, eating a diet known as the Lion Diet, which is exclusively ruminant meat, water, and salt. And since salt is 1/3 of what makes up my diet as far as the ingredients themselves, I thought we would come talk a little bit about salt and ingredients today. Because there's one thing that I personally wouldn't have thought of is that they're putting ingredients in salt other than sodium and chloride, or in the case of some table salts, that maybe they're adding the iodine that they want to add. That actually they add iodide, not iodine, to table salt to make it, give you some iodine sufficiency. But in other videos, I've talked about how that particular type of iodine isn't terribly bioavailable for you, but we're not going to talk about the iodine itself today. I do want to focus on some other ingredients I've noticed in some salts lately, particularly when I've gone to places like McDonald's or Circle K, and I've grabbed a salt packet because I wanted to be able to eat maybe a hamburger patty at McDonald's and add a little bit of salt to it, or I'm getting a hamburger patty from the Circle K if they've got that particular setup there because I'm needing some meat and I think I'm in a pinch, so I figured I'll just grab a meat patty and then put a little salt on it. But then I started to look at the salt packets and I thought, salt, sodium silic aluminate, dextrose, and or sodium thiosulfate and potassium iodide. So we already understand why the potassium iodide's there, and salt obviously should be there. But what is this sodium silic aluminate? What is sodium thiosulfate? And why in the world do they have dextrose in our salt? For a lot of people who are doing a all-meat diet like the Lion Diet or a carnivore diet in general, or even a keto diet, is because they're really trying to watch how many carbohydrates they're taking in to keep those at a low level so their body can stay in a process of burning ketones, burning your own fat, and producing ketones as a result of that, and staying in the shape that they want to be in. So they're trying to keep sugar out of their body. And when I'm going to, say, a convenience store or a fast food restaurant to get something to eat, if I'm going to get a meat patty, I'm going to use some salt. And if I'm not carrying some of my favorite salt with me, which is Redmond salt, then I'm going to probably try to use what they have there. But when I noticed that they had these other things in it, I thought, we got to come take a look at this and see what these are all about. Because I don't know why they would put sugar in any form in my salt. It doesn't make sense to me. My first inclination is to think this is just their way of getting us hooked on everything, because they do use sugar to that effect. And if they can find a reason to sneak it in there, I think they're going to sneak it in there because they want you eating their product. They want you addicted to their product. And if it's something that gives you a rise in blood sugar, these companies that make this stuff know it's going to cause you to crave it more. It's going to cause your body to want it more. They know sugar has a stronger act on us than some of the stronger drugs out there do, and it keeps us coming back for their food. So it's hard for me not to think that that's reason number one. But I wanted to be fair, take a look at what the reasons are, and we'll go from there. First, let's take a look at this one sodium silic aluminate. Here on this website, I see it's something called Moment of Science. I don't know much about it, but it does give me an option to take a look at why some of these things would be in our salt. And this article is called Why Doesn't Table Salt Stick Together? And they say in our last program, we talked about table salt, technically called sodium chloride, which is available in iodized form. That means that it includes a small amount of potassium iodide or sodium iodide added to the sodium chloride. Iodized salt is intended to supply us with the chemical element iodine, an essential nutrient. Iodized salt has been available in the United States since 1924. But a table salt additive, even more common than iodine, is some anti-caking agent to keep the salt crystals from sticking together as they absorb moisture from the air. Salt crystals are made of sodium and chlorine atoms linked together like Tinker Toys to form a three-dimensional framework. Some of the atoms are evenly spaced, and the connections between atoms are at right angles. Sodium chloride crystals take the form of cubes. those cubes can pack closely together like children's blocks. As those closely packed cubes absorb water from the air, they partially dissolve and fuse together. To prevent this, salt manufacturers add a compound such as sodium silic aluminate or magnesium carbonate, among other possibilities. These anti-caking agents absorb moisture more readily than salt and also can coat the crystals to keep them from touching. An old-fashioned way to fight salt from caking is to add sugar or rice to the salt shaker. These absorb moisture but don't coat crystals as well as commercial additives do. So there's their reason. There's their excuse, is that they got to keep the salt from sticking together. They're using the dextrose as an anti-caking agent. They're also using the sodium silic aluminate as an anti-caking agent. Let's see, what about sodium thiosulfate? What's the deal with sodium thiosulfate? Description: sodium thiosulfate is an inorganic sodium salt composed of sodium and thiosulfate ions in a 2-to-1 ratio. It has a role as an antidote to cyanide poisoning, a nephroprotective agent, so that's for your kidneys, and an antifungal drug. Sodium thiosulfate is water-soluble salt and reducing agent that reacts with oxidizing agents. Although its exact mechanism of action is unknown, thiosulfate likely provides an exogenous source of sulfur, therefore hastening the detoxification of cyanide through the enzyme rhodinase, which converts cyanide to the relatively non-toxic, excretable thiocyanate ion. In addition, this agent neutralizes the relative alkaline species of nitrogen mustard, thereby decreasing skin toxicity related to nitrogen mustard extravasation. What in the world? I still don't know what it is. I just read what it is, and I don't know what it is. It doesn't sound like it has anything to do with making the salt less sticking together. So let's see, why did they... Sugar, okay, here's other ingredients. So they're saying here that sugar and dextrose and other ingredients such as sodium thiosulfate, sodium carbonate, sodium bicarbonate are then added to stabilize iodine and make it bind to refined salt's fine uniform crystals. Let's take a look at that sentence in context here. Iodine is a key mineral needed to prevent goiter. It is naturally present in sea salt, but because it is a highly unstable element, it quickly evaporates away during the industrial refining process. To prevent goiter, iodine as potassium iodide, potassium iodate, sodium iodide, or sodium iodate is often added back to table salt after refining is complete. Sugar and dextrose and other ingredients such as sodium thiosulfate, sodium carbonate, and sodium bicarbonate are then added to stabilize iodine and make it bind to refined salt's fine uniform crystals. The popular Morton brand of table salt, much of which is produced from San Francisco Bay brine, is generally iodine as potassium iodide with the anti-caking agent calcium silicate. So all of these things are being used as anti-caking agents according to the manufacturers. But for whatever reason, they're adding these different things to our table salt. This is one more reason why I often say avoid the table salt, because not only is it refined and missing all of its trace minerals, not only is the iodine not very bioavailable for you, but you have to add these other things that are anti-caking agents, which you don't know exactly how those things are going to react with your body, especially in larger amounts. And if you're on a diet like I am, where you consume a lot of salt, you want to make sure you're not consuming a lot of things that you don't want in your diet. And dextrose is certainly something you want to avoid if you're on a carnivore way of eating, because dextrose has a very strong effect on blood sugar. It has a very high glycemic index, I guess is what you would say, because it really spikes your blood sugar quickly, which is what you're trying to avoid when you're on a ketovore or a keto or a carnivore way of eating, like I am, like the Lion diet, where I am trying to keep sugar out of my diet completely so that I am not having my body produce insulin to deal with that sugar. I'm operating more on ketones, which is going to give me a healthier lifestyle. So obviously, if you're on a carnivore way of eating, I would be careful to avoid some of the salts out there that have those extra ingredients in them. If you can keep some good salt handy. Redmond salt makes some small containers that you can order to have, to take and carry in your car. I have used those many times before myself, but sometimes I catch myself out and about without them as well. And one of the things I love about Redmond salt is what the ingredients say: ancient sea salt. That's it. That's the only ingredients that shows up here. This is one of my favorite kinds for cooking with. This is the kosher salt. It's a good bit smaller than the coarse salt that you have to grind up yourself. I keep some of that for salting to taste. And then also when I'm cooking, I like to use Redmond smoked salt because, once again, ingredients include smoked ancient sea salt. Nothing else. Nothing I'm not looking for on a way of eating that has been so good for me. So we've got to watch out for what the ingredients are and stuff that we didn't even know we had to watch out for. Also, be sure to check the ingredients on the meat that you buy, especially if you're buying ground beef from the store. A lot of times you'll see some ingredients in those, but that's for another video. Anyway, that's all I got for this one, guys. I'll see you next time. Stick around for a quick word from Redmond Salt, one of my affiliates that has helped support this channel, because I love their salt and I think you will too. Check it out.
If we pay extra, could we maybe get some grease or fat?
Still coming out.
I love it just as much as I did before.